some issues that he may have with learning, with assessing the learning.
Okay.
So he will be placed on what we call it the Special Educational Needs Register.
Right.
So every school will have a register. So the class teacher will then work with a SENCO, and every school will have a Special Educational Needs SENCO who is obviously trained to deal with and identify children who may have got SEN needs.
So SENCO is Special Educational Needs Coordinator, yeah?
Yes.
So coordinator will work with the teachers, right?
Yes.
So in order for a SENCO must be trained to be one, isn't it? Right. Okay. So that's what we are looking at. So training the SENCO and then also training the teachers, right? So after that, do you think the now it's the government that must make all these kind of changes?
Yes,
Yeah.
because there has got to be the political will, followed obviously by legislation. And so once the resources are there, then you have, there is then the issue of implementation. So when the schools are given the resources, then obviously the school can support the child. And at the same time, all the schools in UK, we have what we call it an educational psychologist attached to the school.
Right. Okay.
So if a teacher sort of identifies, I think this child has got SEN needs in terms of ASD traits, like repetitive behaviors or sensory issues of not being able to cope with noise. So the school would then see what sort of like a program of support that they can actually assist the child. And then if they feel a class teacher may not have that skill, they may then invite an educational psychologist who may come in and see the child and work with the child.
Okay.
But sometimes what schools may find that the school-based resources is not sufficient, and they would need to have a more detailed assessment of the needs of the child.
Right.
So that is when they will present the paperwork to myself, and then we make a decision at panel to agree or not whether to have a more detailed investigation of the child's needs. So that is where we work now together with the health authority. So we would have the speech and language therapist involved, we have the occupational therapist involved, we would have the educational psychologist involved to look and assess the child in consultation with the parents. And after this whole assessment period that could take about 6 to 8 weeks, we will then have the reports. So once I get the reports, I will then present it again to the panel. And in that panel, we would have the educational psychologist, we would have a head teacher, we would have a SEN specialist, and we will look at that report and we make a decision as to what basically is the SEN needs of this child.
Right.
So this child could be a child from the reports as an outcome of the investigation to have ASD or autistic spectrum disorder. Or the child could be one who may present as a child with moderate learning difficulties, or a child that may present as a child with emotional behavior difficulties, or a child that may present as an ADHD.
Okay. Okay. One final question, Kak. Do you have like specific amount of funds for all kinds of special child, or is it just on case by case basis, or how much is the fund for one person?
So when the schools are delegated, we call it schools are delegated with resources to support the child or every child that they have identified as SEN. The government would normally delegate to amount of about £6,000,
Right.
which would equate in terms of hours of support, about 8 hours of support for a child. But once the child has completed the statementing process, when we issue the statement, there will always be funding attached to each particular statement, depending on the needs of the child. So it could be an ASD child, whereby the parents would like the child to be educated within a mainstream school, where there would have to be involvement, like, say, on a weekly basis, a speech and language therapist, on a weekly basis, an occupational therapist, or it could be on a termly basis, then we would say this child will need about, let's say, 15 hours of support a week. So we can therefore attach that hours of support to this legal document or the statement.
Okay.
But this will obviously be reviewed every year. The statement
year.
reviewed, and professionals again will sit and have meetings, like one that